I'm so grateful to have Glenn come today and speak for us. We've become Zoom buddies and connected here. And it's just such a pleasure to have you come in and share your experience, strength, and hope with us. And welcome, Glenn. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Vivian. I thought you didn't love me anymore. My name is Glenn, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm glad that that's not true. I'm going to talk about a couple of people in my life. There's a Judy, there's a Ginger, there's a Julie, there's a Jane. So I think I'm in love with people, but that was my first wife, second wife, girlfriend, and then Jane, which is my present wife. I think I'm going to keep this one. We're going to stay together. My mom died when I was 16, and my father knew that she had terminal cancer, and he didn't tell anybody. He kept it to himself. That's the way the doctors handled it back then. And I could see my mom was deteriorating, and she actually died about a week before my birthday. So I was really upset that I couldn't celebrate my birthday. I mean, see, it's all about me. At 16 years old, it was all about me. So I shortly moved out of the house. My father got his mother, my grandmother, to move in to take care of us 3 kids. And I have 2 younger sisters. And I was not happy with that whole situation. And I was starting to act out. Let me just say it that way. I was starting to drink as much as I could and stay out as late as I could and just be a good delinquent. And in the middle of the night, I snuck out of the house and packed all my 45 RPM records. For any of you, they're little things with big holes in the middle. I mean, anyway, packed all my 45 RPM records and put them in the car, which is my worldly possessions, and moved into a rooming house on the other side of town. And I never went back. So I was kind of mad at my father for not telling us kids that my mom was dying. And I carried that with me until I got into recovery. And I'll talk about that later, but until I got into recovery, and I had to make amends, and I went and saw him, and it was a great moment. But I lived out in this rooming house, and I fell in love with the donut shop girl. That's Judy, number 1. If you guys are going to keep track, there's going to be 3. My first wife, and we decided it would be cheaper to live in the same room rather than in separate rooms, so we decided to live together, and then soon after that we got married. Later I went into college, and she supported me through college, and we had a dog. And after I graduated, we split up, and she took the dog and I kept the apartment. And I thought that was kind of a fair split. I mean, I'm into selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, self-serving. That was all about me. I was an electronic engineer, and I started working for the government through contractors and building submarine steering and diving stations. This is a trainer, and I was going to Groton where they build the submarines, and I was helping them install them, and then I would teach a course on how to maintain and operate this steering and diving trainer. Then we did Air Force jobs where we had flight simulators and things like that. It was very interesting stuff. And then I left that company. I went to another company where I was working on, again, military contracts as a consultant now. So I'm definitely making more money than I ever should be making. I had wife number two came into the picture, and we had two kids, a boy and a girl. And then I left in the middle of the night. I was very active then because I was making more money than I should have made. I was, I had more money in my pocket than I should have. And it gave me the opportunity to do whatever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it. And I left wife number two, Ginger, and was partying. I mean, I really was partying hard. I would go out on Monday with one crew. Well, when I left my wife, I went to this apartment. It was wall-to-wall carpeting with no furniture. And I remember sitting against the wall with my knees up against my chest and looking at this vast expanse of openness and realizing like that's how I felt inside. I felt totally empty. Father Martin calls it a God hole. I didn't know about God holes then, but that's really what I was feeling. I was feeling totally empty. So then like I just started to say, I was going partying on Monday with a different group on Tuesday. Tuesday night was dart night in a local pub. Wednesday night was a different crew. Thursday night was the start of the weekend. And that would be my weekend crew, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I was partying every night. I was partying to fill up this hole. I didn't want to be alone by myself in the apartment. I had various girlfriends, but they were just, fly-by-night companions. That's all they were. Then I fell in love with Jane. Jane is wife number three. And she also was the office manager where I worked. And we bought her parents' home in Glen Cove, Long Island. And we moved from the apartment to Glen Cove, and it was a good relationship. We had a good time together. We really enjoyed each other, enjoyed her parents, and we went blueberry picking. In Pennsylvania, they have these big blueberries. They're about huge, maybe a half inch in diameter, and no thorns. And you put this bucket around your neck with a string, and you pick them and you eat them, and you pick them and you eat them, and you could eat as much as you want. And I like that part, And if a little bit is the right amount, and more is better, too much has got to be perfect. I don't know if anybody understands that, but that's my credo. So we picked blueberries. We all picked blueberries. We combined them, and we had 50 pounds of blueberries. And I went into the place where you pay for it, and I saw a little recipe book, and you can make blueberry muffins and blueberry tarts and blueberry pie. And in the back of the book, I saw blueberry wine. I said, oh, this is great. So we made the tarts, and we made the pies and the muffins, and we made this blueberry wine in a 1-quart jar with a balloon on top. And periodically, when the balloon gets big, you have to kind of burp the balloon and let the air out. And the wine was great. I mean, it's like God's gift to mankind, So the next year, we went picking blueberries again, the same place, because we loved those blueberries. They're just so big. We didn't make any pies. We didn't make any muffins. We didn't make any tarts. We just made the wine. And we had tons of blueberry wine around the house. And we're catching fruit flies like this. It was just great fun. But that was the beginning of my winemaking career. Okay. Like I said, we lived in Glen Cove. Glen Cove has a large population of Italians. So I went to the local Italian guy who imports grapes from California. He has these refrigerated tractor trailers come in and back up to his warehouse, and all the local Italian guys buy cases of grapes. And so I started to get involved with making wine. Now it takes two 42-pound boxes of grapes to make a 5-gallon carboy. A carboy is the glass 5-gallon jug, you know, like you see at the water coolers, the glug glug thing. And so it takes about 84 pounds of grapes to make 5 gallons of wine. And I made more and more and more wine in successive years. If a little bit is the right amount, more is better. Too much has got to be perfect, right? So on the last year of my winemaking, my year of infamy, 1987, I had 3/4 tons of grapes delivered to my home. That's enough to make 950 bottles of wine. If there's anybody here from the IRS, we gave it all away or drank it ourselves, okay? I have nothing to do with selling this stuff. But it was great. We had wine all over our basement. I have a whole wall filled with different kinds of wine. We mixed different grapes and we made Petit Syrah with Cabernet Sauvignon. I mean, we just, and I'm an electronic engineer. So I had a book of all of my recipes and the different specific gravities. You see, you use a hydrometer to measure the specific gravity of the grape juice, and that tells you how much alcohol you're going to end up with after it ferments. I used to have tasting parties. We used to go into my basement and people would say, try this wine, try that wine. It's delicious. And some of this wine was still gurgling. It was still percolating, you know, it was still actively fermenting, and people would drink it. And next thing you know, they go home and it's fermenting in their belly. I mean, they would call me the next day saying, man, what did you give me? I was burping all night and everything. Anyway, to give you an idea of my more is better thing, it was snowing one year. Now, we have a dairy barn. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Dairy barn is a place where you just pull through in your car and you can get milk, eggs, and bread. And you can also buy beer in New York. But they had ice cream also. And they were running a sale. And you can get 2 half-gallons of ice cream for $5 or $4. I don't know. It was some great deal. And it was a good brand ice cream. Now, in the middle of this snowstorm, it's a blizzard, actually. I'm remembering this sale, and this day was the last day. So I said, you know, I'm going to drive down to Dairy Barn. It's not that bad out there yet. I'm going to buy some ice cream. So my wife thought I was crazy. So I get in the car and I drive down to the Dairy Barn. And as I'm getting there and I'm saying, gee, you know, it's such a good sale. I probably should buy maybe 4 half-gallons. No, I'll get 6 half-gallons of ice cream. I'll put them up in the freezer. It'll be fine. It'll last me a long time. Such a good sale. So I bought the 6 half-gallons, and then I'm driving home in the middle of a blizzard now, and I'm thinking, you know, that was such a good sale, and this is the last day. I turned around and I bought 6 more half-gallons. So a little bit is the right amount, more is better. Too much has got to be perfect, right? So I put them in the freezer. I said, this is going to last me 6 months, a year. It'll be fine. Well, I definitely have the disease of more, okay? Because if you give me a dish of ice cream, I want the half a gallon. So those 12 half-gallon of ice cream didn't last maybe 3 weeks. I mean, I just went right through them. But that's the way it was with me. You know, if you tell me to drive 20 miles an hour, I want to go 30. If you tell me to have 1 dish of ice cream, I want a half gallon. If you tell me I can have 1 glass of wine, I want a bunch. I joined a dart league, and Tuesday night was dart night, and I never joined anything. I didn't like joining the bowling league or any of those things because I'm not a joiner, I said. And I went to the dart league because Tuesday night you could drink your head off. In fact, I used to go to my friend's place where he works. He has a dartboard set up, and it's a practice board, and all the numbers are smaller. So if you can hit the bullseye on this practice board, you're in better shape for the regular competition board. And we would do certain dry goods and shots of Johnny Walker or whatever I brought over. to try to improve our skills. And we found various combinations, was better than other combinations. And then we would go out to the bar to actually do the tournament. So it was pretty crazy. So his name was John. I'll get to him in a minute. But my day of infamy was September 29th, 1987. September 29th, I had a fight with my boss. He wanted me to do something that I thought was ridiculous, and I was kind of pissed off. So I left early, and I went to the local watering hole, and a friend of mine was going to meet me over there. And we got over there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Barefoot Peddler, it was called. And we go belly up to the bar, and we have a couple of beers. And he said, "Hey, how about a couple of shots?" Yeah, well, why not? I'm mad at my boss. Why not? We had a couple of shots, and he bought a round, and another guy bought a round. Next thing you know, the bartender's buying a round. Now, you can't leave if the bartender is buying a round. That's a free one. So now it starts another cycle. And I've done this before at this same place, and I wanted to get home to my dinner, but the 11 o'clock news was on the TV, and there it is again. I'm missing my dinner. Damn it, how could I do it? And there would be my dinner on the dining room table, cold, I guess, like it's supposed to be. My wife's in bed already. But this particular night, I was with September 29th, I was with my buddy, and I said, I have to go into Queens. We're in Nassau County, Long Island. And I said, I have to go into Queens to buy some wine labels. You see, I used to have the labels made with my last name. My last name is Karashkat. I had Karashkat Winery on the labels, So these were all great wines that I was making. They never lasted more than a year. I never had vintage wines that I made. But anyway, on the way to Queens to get these labels that I had printed up, I stopped at the local 7-Eleven, and I bought a 6-pack of St. Pauli Girl. See, I drank the beers with your pinky out, I can't do it here with this big thing. I used to take a drink with your pinky out. That's the beers that I used to drink with. I never drank this Bud, the local common beer, or Rheingold or Schmitz or any of those things. I drank the highfalutin beer. So I bought the Tsingtao beer from Japan, or I bought the beer cans, the oil cans that keep you hopping, from Australia, the Foster's Lager, anything that had high octane in it. And so this time I bought the St. Pauli Girl, bought a 6-pack of those, and we're drinking it on the way in. He brought some dry goods. Now, I know this is an AA meeting, but it is in my story, and I'm just going to touch on it, the fact that it allowed me to drink more. And it seemed that alcohol was always my common denominator. I qualify for NA and I qualify for AA, but every time that I was doing drugs, I was also drinking. But when I was drinking, I didn't always necessarily do drugs. So I'm an alcoholic. And anyway, we did some dry goods on the way, and now I'm just really wrecked. And I'm driving in a blackout, which is how I used to drink. I mean, that's where I thought the goal was, to drink to blackout. So now the rest of the story is as it was told to me, because I don't remember this part. But I stop at my local, this other pub, and I drink some Johnny Walker Red. You wouldn't know it by now, but Johnny Walker Red was my drink of choice. And I get home about maybe 11 o'clock. My wife's already in bed. Remember, this whole night started because I was mad at my boss for some stupid reason. So in the middle of my blackout, I jumped on top of my wife, put my knees on her shoulders, and with my clenched fist, I started punching her face. Now, I don't remember any of this. And I woke up the next morning in the spare bedroom. I never sleep in the spare bedroom. I woke up at 9 o'clock. I'm never late for work. 8 o'clock is start time. I'm never late for work. I called my wife. She wasn't there. I said, what's going on? I called her at her job. And she said, well, you don't remember? I said, I don't remember. What are you talking about? She said, well, you'll see when you get home. So when I come home, her face was all puffy and black and blue and yellow. And I said, my God, what happened to you? She said, you really don't remember? I said, no, I don't. She said, well, you beat me up last night. And I went to the courts and I took out a restraining order. And you have to appear to court tomorrow. She said, you might as well wear a three-piece suit because you need to look good. So now I'm getting nervous, okay? I mean, I've never had a restraining order. I never hit a woman before. I mean, this is getting out of hand now. So I go to court and she added 3 stipulations to this restraining order. The restraining order was for 6 months. I had to be a good boy for 6 months. And if I was a good boy, I wouldn't get jail time. Now, I've been in Nassau County Jail in the past. I made the unfortunate mistake one time of drinking to oblivion on a Friday of a 3-day weekend. So I ended up waiting for arraignment until Tuesday in jail. So I didn't want to be in jail. My point is that I didn't want to have Bubba for a lover. You know, I'm not interested in doing that kind of thing. And the 3 stipulations she added to the restraining order was I couldn't drink in the house. I said, okay, well, I'll just drink outside in the backyard on the patio, you know, my keen intellectual mind. She says that I can't come home drunk. I said, oh, okay, I'll just stop at the Barefoot Peddler and have 2 drinks. I don't know if you guys ever tried the 2-drink trick, but that's how I convinced myself that 2 drinks would be no problem and I would end up home in time for dinner and everything else. The 3rd stipulation was the killer. She said I had to get counseling at the local alcohol counseling service. And I knew that they knew. And I knew that the jig was up. I tried stopping drinking many times in the past, but now I knew that this was going to be a real problem. So I went to alcohol counseling service and they tell me that I have to go to a meeting, at least 1 meeting a week. And there's a meeting called the Glen Head Beginners meeting on Monday night, whatever it was, Monday night. And I need to go to that meeting. Okay, fine. And she told me where it was. And she said, report back next week. So I came back the next week. She said, how was the meeting? I said, I don't know the directions you gave me. I couldn't find the meeting, you know. She said, okay, well, now she drew me a little map. And I came back the following week and she said, so how was that meeting? I said, well, I got there and the door was locked. They must lock the door at 6:45 when the meeting starts. And she said, listen, they don't lock the doors, okay? You're starting to BS me, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. If you miss next week, I'm going to say you're in violation of the restraining order, and you're going to go to jail. Okay. I'll go to those stupid A&A meetings. So I go to this, it's like a church basement. Go down this 10 stairs or whatever it is into this basement. Low ceilings, maybe it's 10 feet ceilings. Drop ceiling, and they smoked. Oh my God, the smoke was like from about knee high up to the ceiling. You had to go like this to go to the back kitchen, you know, to get a cup of coffee. And I sat down and they had some chairs benches around the perimeter of the meeting room and folding chairs in the middle. But on this one bench, there was this guy with a big beard and coveralls. And he really looked disheveled, and he was laying back and he was like sleeping, nodding, you know. I'm like, oh man, this is what it's come to. I'm like with these derelicts. I know it's really terrible. This was John Kelly. John Kelly doesn't mind me using his name. He had 10 years at the time, okay? But he came home from work. He worked on the railroad. That's how he dressed at the railroad. And he was just nodding on the bench. So I started to see the happy faces, the smiling faces and the dancing eyes. And I said, oh man, these guys are really happy. And I really want what you have. And I didn't know what it was. But somebody came up to me and said, do you have a big book? I didn't know what he was talking about. He said, here, kid, here's a big book. Start reading from chapter 5. Now, I don't believe in that now, but that's what he told me to do then. He said, read chapter 5 and start from there. I mean, there are other chapters in front of chapter 5, just saying. And there's Roman numerals and doctor's opinion and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, if a little bit is the right amount and more is better, too much has got to be perfect. I started to go to more and more and more meetings. I started to really like this stuff. We had a business meeting one time because it was so smoky and people were starting to complain. We had a business meeting about the smoke situation. And they said, okay, we'll have this side be smoke and this side will be non-smoking. I don't know if you've ever tried. It's like, I see somebody nodding their head. It's a little ridiculous, but in our infinite wisdom, we tried that. No, that didn't work, But I started getting involved with going to meetings a lot. And I really enjoyed going to meetings. There was this old timer. His name is Fred. They used to call him Throw Your Hat Fred. He had a baseball cap, and to make his point, he would throw it across the room while he was sharing, And so Throw Your Hat Fred was a good friend of mine. He had maybe 30 plus years at the time. And I went up to him and I said, Fred, I'm really grateful for this group. I'm sober now. It's been sober for, I don't know, maybe 60 days or something like that. In the Glenhead group, you count up you say your day count every time you show up. So people who were conscientious of my day count, as well as me being conscientious of it. And I was coming up on 60 days. And I said, I wanted to show the gratitude I have for this group. So I want to buy a case of big books. Remember, I was making more money than I needed. And he said, well, instead of buying a case of big books, why don't you become the book chairperson? I said, well, okay, what is that? He goes, well, you take money from the treasury, you buy the books and you lay them out on the table ahead of the meeting. And then if somebody wants a big book, you sell them the big book and you take the money, you put it in the basket and you reorder more books. I said, yeah, I can do that. So I became the book chairperson. Little did I know that this old timer, Throw Your Hat Fred, just became the book chairperson like 3 weeks before. And he went, here, kid, you got to watch out for these damn old timers, because they know what they're doing. Anyway, again, if a little bit is the right amount, more is better. Too much has got to be perfect. I bought every book that GSO ever had. I bought every pamphlet that GSO ever had. I started going to Hazleton. I bought the Hazleton Daily Meditation books. I bought their step pamphlets. And now they have a business meeting on the fact that we had this non-AA and AA conference approved material on the same table. We can't have this. Oh my God, what are we going to do? So they had a group conscience meeting and they decided that we could have an AA conference approved table and an AA related table separated by 1 inch or 2. All right. And to this day, that's the way it is. And I'm proud that I was the principal guy that made that happen. So I was working at this job as a consultant and I lost my job. Before that, I became the treasurer of this group. Then I became GSR, then DCM at large for Nassau County. So I was big into service. And then I lost my job. I got laid off about 1 week before my 10th anniversary with this company. And I was going to be 100% vested in my 401k, and they fired me. Well, they lopped off a whole division at that time. And I went, no, son of a bitch, I'm bad mouthing them. But I go to my noontime meeting, and I said, I'm really pissed off that they laid me off, and I'll find another job because I know I'm in good hands, like the Allstate commercial. I know I'm in good hands, and God is going to take care of me. It'll be all right. Well, it turns out that all the military contracts were drying up, and there were 50,000 electronic engineers on Long Island that were laid off as a result. Grumman laid off, and Republic, and all these aircraft manufacturers just laid off tons of people. So I was up against PhDs and guys with much higher education than I had. Now I wasn't getting a job anywhere. But the guys in my home group had a lot of cassette tapes, and they were saying, well, here, borrow my tapes and you can make a copy. And I did that, and I was listening to these tapes. I'm hearing all these great speakers, Clancy and Johnny Harris and all these old time speakers that were the backbone of my sobriety. And I started copying these cassettes, and I'm selling them from the back of my trunk. I'm dealing the cassettes out of my trunk now, right? And I'm having a lot of fun doing this. And I decided I'm going to start doing this as my business. My wife thought I was crazy, but I started going to conventions and recording conventions on a cassette recorder and then copying them. I bought a 1 to 3, it's called. You can make 3 cassettes in 3 minutes, and you can make 3 copies in 3 minutes. And so I'm starting to make a lot of these cassettes and selling them, and I'm the beginning of my business. Glenn K Audio is alive, and I'm going to a lot of conventions and hearing some great stuff. So if a little is the right amount, more is better. Too much has got to be perfect. I started ordering more and more and more cassettes, and now I'm ordering cassettes like 500 in a case. I'm ordering multiple cases at a time. I mean, I had arrived, and I'm going to conventions all over, and I really enjoy it. I'm really having a good time. I went to maybe 50 Joe and Charlie Big Book studies all over the country. I love those guys. And one time I recorded Joe and Charlie in Destin, Florida, and I called up the chairperson about a couple of weeks before, and I said, listen, who is your Saturday night speaker? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, when Joe and Charlie come, they don't speak on Saturday night. They finish up in the afternoon, they go to dinner, and then they go to the hotel, and that's it. They're done. And he said, well, I didn't have a speaker lined up, but he said, since you're coming, how about you? Would you like to speak? I said, sure, I'd be happy to. Because, I learned from service, suit up and show up. Anytime somebody asks me anything, I'm here. Right, Vivian? So here I am at the Saturday night meeting, and in walks Joe and Charlie, and they sit in the front table. And I'm like, oh my God, here are the super gurus, and I'm going to be sharing my story. And in the middle of my talk, I say, as Joe always says, is it God or is it God? And I go about my talk because that's something I picked up from Joe and I just loved. The next morning, I come back on Sunday, and they're finishing up the Big Book study. And Joe says, yeah, as my good friend Glenn always says, is it God or is it God? I went, he's the best. And I started to use that odd God thing. And later on, I asked guys that I sponsor to, if they're struggling with God, if they're struggling with what is God in their life, to write it down in this odd God book. Is it odd or is it God? You don't have to decide, just write it down. Some coincidence happens, the light turns green and you're late, and all of a sudden it turns green. Oh, that's great. And another light turns green. You don't have to make a decision, write it down. And when the evidence becomes overwhelming, you'll realize that God is in your life more than you realize. And so it's the Odd God book. I have these Odd God books. Well, they have the Odd God books all over. Now everybody's running with an Odd God book. I was freaking out being self-employed. I'm freaking out paying my mortgage. I'm living in Glen Cove, which is a high-priced area. My mortgage and taxes were like $3,600 a month. I mean, that's a lot of tapes. Now we're into CDs, but that's a lot of CDs, you know. And I'm really freaking out. I also employed anybody who didn't have a job in my home group. You know, somebody said, "Oh, I lost my job." Hey, come work for me, you know. And they'd be down there fumbling around making cassettes or CDs, whatever we did. But I was struggling on how am I going to pay the mortgage. And then my wife said, "Well, you know, how long have we been doing this?" I said, "I don't know, maybe 20 years or so. I've been self-employed." She said, "We haven't missed a mortgage payment yet. 20 years times 12 months. So she said, maybe it's one of your odd God things that you need to put it in your little book." She's saying it snidely, you know. Okay, so I put it in my book. Then the last trip we took, we had a job in Portland, Oregon, another job 3 weeks later in Houston. And I said, you know what, instead of flying all our stuff out and flying us out and then flying it back and then doing the same to Houston, why don't we do a giant road trip? And we take a month off. So we loaded up the minivan with everything we had and we drove out. We stopped at Yellowstone. Actually, on the way to Yellowstone, I was coming up on Wisconsin. We were on Route 80, and Wisconsin is not that far. And I called up a friend of mine who goes to these big book studies in Florida all the time, and Luann. And I said to Luann, "Hey, we're coming up on Wisconsin pretty soon, and we're going across the country, and maybe we could have coffee." And she said, "Well, I'm not in Wisconsin. I'm in my winter home, which is in Montana." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, we're not going to go into Montana." She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, we're going to go to Yellowstone and spend a couple of nights out there on the way to Portland." She said, "Well, my house is right outside the west entrance of Yellowstone. Why don't you come and stay with us?" Now, is it odd or is it God? I'm just going to leave that there, right? We stayed with them. We had a wonderful time, beautiful home. And we go off to Portland. Now, prior to this trip, we had a couple of psychics. We went to my wife and I both went to a couple of psychics, and they said that you're going to find your new home. I went, "Oh, okay, we'll see." My two sisters live in Denver. We thought for sure, we love Denver. We've been out there many times. And on the way back from Portland, going to Houston, we said we'll stop in Denver. And we'll talk to my sisters and we'll look around for a home and we'll see what's going on. And didn't find a home. It was way too expensive. And we said, "Oh, the psychics are they're wrong." So we went to Houston. We went to New Orleans on the way home from Houston. My wife has never been there. This is Labor Day weekend. And the police start to come down Bourbon Street and they're clearing the street. And all of a sudden it's a big parade, and it's the Mardi Gras parade, the gay Mardi Gras that they have every year on Labor Day weekend. It's called Southern Decadence. We had no clue, but it was fun. And the guys were throwing beads to me and the gals were throwing beads to my wife. You know, it was just, we had a lot of fun. So now we're coming back to New York on the interstate, and the car breaks down. It started to smell of smoke, you know, the burnt rubber. And we're right at an exit for Greenville. We're in Tennessee. And I said, "Well, we'll just go into town. We'll see what we can find to fix it." And we pull into town and we go to a guy who's going to fix our car. And he said it's going to be an overnight thing. So we stay in a hotel. And in each room, they have a real estate book. And I started looking in the real estate book, and there's 5 rooms on 5 acres of property, and it has a pond in the back, and it's $500 a year in taxes. Oh my God, 500 a year. I'm paying 15,000 a year in taxes on Long Island. I said, this is crazy. We're going to move. So we decided we're going to move. And we went to another convention a couple of weeks later in Rhode Island. And I spoke to Lily. Some of you may know Lily H. from Maine. And I said, Lily said she's going on vacation. I said, oh, that's really nice. Where are you going on vacation? She said, oh, we're going to Greenville. Now, Greenville's the town that we pulled into to get fixed. She's going to Greenville, North Carolina, but I heard Greenville. You know, is it odd or is it God? And one time we're coming down looking for property, and we're in Virginia, and we stop at a restaurant, and I see a Harley Davidson dealer up on a hill. I used to ride a Harley. And I say to the waitress, I said, how do you get to that Harley dealer? What's the directions up there? She would take this road, that road, and then make a left on Greenville Road. I said, Greenville Road? My wife said, you better put it down in your odd God book, kid, because a lot of Greenvilles are popping up. So, okay, fine. So we found this property. Well, my wife saw this property. She says, I really love it now. Being an engineer, I have to go around to all these different places to find property. After 2 months of looking at the property, I said, wow, look at this one. This one is great. She goes, yeah, I know. That's the first one we saw. That's the one I said I wanted. So, okay. So now we're into this home. It's gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. The mountains, the Appalachian Mountains are right there off our backyard. We have a beautiful view. Now we have a pool and a hot tub. So we do a staycation all the time. We don't go anywhere. We love it. So is it odd or is it God that we're here? I find that I go down streets and I make a wrong turn. What is that? Why am I on this road? The next thing I know, I see these beautiful flowers or this nice house. And I said, oh, I can't wait to take my wife down this road, how great it is. So I'm getting more and more and more connected to God as time goes on. I had no idea that that was the thing that I was looking for, that was the hole in my soul. God is in my life all the time. I'm laying in bed one night with my wife and we get a phone call from my daughter. My daughter says, you know, I'm getting these annoying emails that says, we might be related. You know, she thought it was one of these bogus things. We might be related. And she just deletes the email. And then one time she gets pissed off and she said, all right, tell me something that I should know if we're related that, you know, that you don't know. Okay. So she says, well, I was born in Huntington, Long Island, and my mom's name is Annette Melia. So it didn't mean anything to my daughter. My daughter called me up and she says, she told me this same thing. And I said, Annette Melia. I said, I went out with Annette Melia. And my daughter said, what? I said, yeah, when I was in high school, I went out with Annette. So apparently through Ancestry.com, this girl, Michelle, and my daughter through Ancestry had a link, and I have a new daughter. So I had a boy and a girl, and all of a sudden I realized that I had another daughter. That blew my mind. The psychics who said that we would find a home on that trip also said, I see you have 3 kids. I said, no, I have 2 kids. I don't have 3 kids. They knew, but I didn't know. So I called Michelle, my new daughter. She's now older than my oldest daughter. So my oldest daughter gets upset at that. But anyway, Michelle lives in Savannah, and we had a timeshare in Florida. So we went through Savannah one day and we stopped at my daughter's home and we spent some time with them, and we stayed at the hotel. And then about a month later, we came back to our timeshare, and this time we invited Michelle and her daughter to come with us, and they spent a week with us in the timeshare. Now, her husband is into amateur radio. He's into photography, all the things that I was into. And I was talking to him like he was an old friend. And so she married her dad, but she didn't even know her dad. How crazy is that? So anyway, Michelle and I, now Michelle has a whole side of this side of the family that of relatives that she now knows that she never had before. She has cousins and aunts and uncles, and everybody is friends with her on Facebook, and they share back and forth. I mean, it's just wonderful. I'm going to be a great grandchild. I'm going to be a great grandfather in the spring as a result of this, Michelle. Yeah, I mean, it's who knew? I do this thing. I'm going to wrap it up. I do this thing called the roadmap. In my early days of recording, back in cassettes, I recorded somebody doing an 11-step workshop in Western New York convention. And when I got home, I thought it was really profound. And I played it back and I wrote down the page numbers he referred to in the big book. And I just wrote it down and I thought it was pretty cool. Well, now I do this thing I call a spiritual roadmap, which is these paragraphs. It takes about 45 minutes for me to go through it the first time with somebody. And takes about 5 minutes to read, but it starts off with, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. So I say, when do you do this? On awakening. Oh, yeah. So the directions are in the book, that kind of thing. And I bounce around all the different steps. And with the advent of Zoom, I started the Lunch Bunch group, which is my group here in Tennessee, March 15th. COVID hit us in Tennessee, and I started the Zoom meeting. And now I do the spiritual roadmap on Zoom, and I do 30 at a time. I mean, it's wild, these people. And now I go to different places, and they say, oh, yeah, I'm doing the roadmap in the morning, and I never saw this person before. So I know that it's going on, and people are passing it on. I am so in love with AA. I am so in love with having God in my life today. I don't have that empty feeling like I had when I first moved out and lived in that empty living room. I'm filled with my children, my grandchildren, and soon to be great grandchildren. And I'm filled with AA. On Zoom, I go to my morning meeting from Seacliff, Long Island, which is where I used to go. And I go there 6:30 in the morning every day. I'm in my old home group. I see my old friends. I mean, this is just, it doesn't get better, but it does. So I want to thank Vivian. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for giving me the ID. And thank you all for having me.